Thank you for joining us today. As promised, we're going to get started on time. So again, thank you for being here. There will be basically three parts to our meeting. I'm going to give you just a very brief overview of the health of our church, sort of membership changes. James Hawes will give you a financial update, address this year's 2022 budget. And then Jason is going to give you an update on the building project. He's a member of the building committee, but tell you about the campaign, the finances that were raised, where we are in that, sort of just general overview and update. And then at the end, we'll have a time for question and answers related to anything that I've shared or James has shared or Jason has shared. The final thing that we'll do is actually have the formal congregational meeting where we will elect officers and trustees for this year. And so we have a hard stop at 10:30 because we have worship after this, so I'm going to work to move us along. And so as we begin, I am going to ask Mary Brock if she will open us in prayer. Amen. Thank you, Mary. The past 2 years have been crazy. Can I get an amen? Amen. Last year, during our congregational meeting, I was looking over my notes. I thought we were at the tail end of COVID and things would begin returning to normal. But I did not know that 2021 would bring a new variant and new cases and, of course, the fire that we had last fall. And so I want to say thank you. You have been, as a congregation, so understanding and patient and gracious through COVID and through the upheaval of the fire. We've had to make so many changes. We've been out in the parking lot. We've been in the fellowship hall. It's not ideal. We've made changes to the schedule, and you have been gracious and understanding all along. So thank you so much for that. I want you to be encouraged, CPC, in spite of all of that. We were just talking this morning in passing about, again, just the news we hear it almost every week, the decline of the American church. And it seems like churches are closing their doors week in and week out. And yet, for whatever reason, and it's just sheer grace, God has seen fit to bless CPC in a number of ways. I'm going to give you two metrics. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but you can see, by the way, at the back, if you haven't already picked one up, it's not necessary now, but there are handouts, 2-page handouts, front and back, just some membership numbers on one side and then a graph and the updated budget on the other side. I don't want you to get distracted by that until it's time, but they're available. So 2 metrics. We added 32 members this past year in 2021, which is the second highest year of added membership in the last 8 years. So in the middle of a pandemic, we added 32 folks this past year, and we baptized 7 souls, 5 children and 2 adult converts. So, you know, I don't always want to hang our hat on those kind of numbers, but I do think that's important to recognize. I think an even greater measure of our church's health is the discipling and growth and the raising up of new leaders. And so at the end of our meeting today, 4 men are being put forward as officers. 3 men as deacons and one man as an elder. And all 4 of those men have come here with their families to CPC within the past 5 years. They've grown, they've taken on leadership roles. It's apparent to CPC, it's apparent to you that God has called them to these offices because you're the one who's nominated them. And so I think that's an incredible measure of health. Not only are we growing numerically and our finances are in a positive place, but God is raising up new leaders in our church. I could say new young leaders because I'm 45 this year. I turned 45 last year. So I got a kid in college. That tell you this, that he is the same age that I was when I proposed to Kimbo, and just a year from now we got married in his timeline. So maybe I'm old. So I think so when I say God is raising up new young leaders, I don't mean my age. I mean like Tim and Oscar, Brian and Matt's. Just you're almost there. You're getting there. You're getting there. So God is faithful. Be encouraged by that. I'm going to turn it over to James, and he's going to share some more about God's faithfulness, particularly in the financial piece. So he's going to give you an update on this past year and then walk you through at a high level this year, 2022.
Good morning. So hopefully everybody got their finances and budget handouts. Our family got a little stuck in getting out the door this morning, so apologize for being late. So as Jeremy was saying, God has been faithful to us, and largely through your faithful giving. I wanted to give a quick review of what we did in 2021 last year, and then kind of go over our budget for this year. Just briefly, really. We set the budget last year at $565,000, which is a bit lower than the previous few years, mainly due to the uncertainty of the youth director position. And then for the prior 4 years, our budget was just above the $600,000 mark. So here's the good news. Our general income for the past year was $607,000, which is wonderful, in a large part due to your faithfulness in giving. And our expenses were $620,000. So just to kind of put it back into perspective, right? We set a budget for $565,000, and our income was $607,000. Most of the variance this past year was concentrated within the youth ministry, bringing on Joe. And that was done kind of in the middle of the year. Actually, I guess it was towards more the end of the year, as the school year was started. Yeah. We hadn't budgeted to bring him on at that point. And Joe is doing an amazing job. He is just knocking it out of the park. He is really doing an amazing job. Okay, so for 2022, the session has agreed to set the budget at $675,000. That is an increase over the past year. It puts us more in line to where we were 3 or 4 years ago, pre-COVID. The session believes that this is a faithful response to where we believe God is calling us as a church. The budget is restorative, it's hopeful, and it's an increase. The main reason for the increases, again, we now have a full-time youth director. We decided to restore the salaries from the previous cuts. General inflation costs, that's hit us hard in a lot of areas, but general inflation costs are kind of a part of that. And then a debt service related to the building remodel, which Jason will say more about in a moment. So on your handout, you can see how expenses are broken down, and we can take any questions that you have about the finances at the end. Elder candidate Matt Whitman, soon to be Elder Matt Whitman, reminded us this morning of Hebrews 10:23. Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. So we this session will continue to ask the Lord to be faithful through his people with their time and their talents and their treasures. And indeed, the Lord has been faithful to us, and he is doing mighty things in the life of CPC, and will continue to do mighty things in the year to come. So I think that's it for now. We'll save questions at the end, and I'll turn this back to Jeremy for another exciting announcement.
You say exciting announcement? Yeah. Yes, thank you, James. If what we're giving here, we've sort of worked on this over the years, and it's meant to be a sort of snapshot of the previous 5 years, just a very high-level understanding of what we budgeted. And a budget, in our setting, really is sort of a projection. Unlike many of you who have a set paycheck, and it's fairly easy to budget because you know how much is going to come in every 2 weeks. Churches, nonprofits, some of you who work on commission, it's a little bit different. So we are projecting what we believe giving will be over the course of the year, and we're trying to set that budget in line with those projections. And also we, unlike maybe your personal finances, we apply a little bit of faith. We're believing and trusting God to grow his church, including in the financial piece. And then at the bottom of there, you'll see the number that we've designated for the budget, as well as how that's broken out in dollar amounts as well as in percentages. If you have specific questions about this, if you want sort of details that's between the lines, our outgoing treasurer is Benj Mosier over here. And he can probably answer those questions. We're going to take questions at the end about anything that we've discussed this morning, the finances, the budget, the building. And so feel free to ask those then. But if you have detailed questions that you'd like to ask, you can speak with Benj. Benj, who is the new incoming treasurer? Tim Eddy. Tim Eddy working, I think, with Stu or Mark, one of those, right? Mark, yeah. So, yes. Now, I want to share a new opportunity before we kind of turn the page on the financial piece, a new opportunity for giving. So, over the last decade, it's been fascinating that giving to CPC has transitioned from the majority being given traditionally, I say traditionally, cash checks in the offering plate or sent into the office. Right, that was the vast majority of how your tithes and offerings were given, to over the last 3 to 5 years, 80% is now given electronically through Realm. And so I think that's an encouraging thing. It's certainly more consistent. But we're adding one little piece to that, and it's called GIFT, G-I-V-T. It's a Dutch company, and Sjoerd has been with us on a couple of occasions. He'll be with us again. But it's just another tool to help folks in the church give. I look forward to adopting it. We're going to be the beta test for the United States. Over 2,000 churches in Europe use it, but we'll be the very first one. So essentially what we will be doing is we discovered that giving is unlike paying your mortgage or your electricity or your OG&E bill. Giving is an act of worship. And so although many of us set our giving up on an automated schedule to come out, sometimes it's done, and I don't want to, I know it's true for me, it's not done with the most thought. And it's not done as a response to the grace of God. And so we want to incorporate giving into the worship service, or reincorporate giving into the worship service as a response to God's grace. So this tool, GIFT, which you're going to hear more about over the next 4 weeks, will start at March 6th, Jason? Yeah. Essentially, you'll just use your phone. And again, this is not going to take the place of Realm. Realm is not going away. You can still give through Realm. It's not going to take the place of cash and check. Giving is just one more way to give in the moment. And so you can, there'll be a QR code on your bulletin, or you'll use your geo location. It'll know you're at CPC. Big Brother will know. And you can give during the offering time, or you can go to one of the giving boxes, and it'll be electrified. What's the right word, Jason? Look, I'm trying to paint a broad brush picture, but Shord, when he's here in a few weeks, will give a much better presentation. Essentially, what we want to do is have time in the service, which we haven't really for over 2 years, for folks to give in another way, responding to the grace of God. And so in light of that, Ethan's going to show a one-minute video on give, and then we're going to transition. It's just one more way for you to respond to God's grace. And really, it's to try and accommodate folks. Like, I think of my son who's in New York, and I hope that he's contributing somewhat to Central Presbyterian, where he's attending in worship. But he called me the other day. And so if I were to ask him to give via Realm, he has no idea what a routing number is. But he does understand QR codes, and he does understand how to use Venmo. So this is essentially a component like that to make it easier for folks to give. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jason, and Jason is going to share about our building. Do you want this mic or yours?
So in addition to the situation with gift and Sjoerd and what Jeremy has shared, I'll tell you that in talking with Sjoerd van Oort, the creator of Gift, every church that has incorporated it in England and in Europe has seen an increase in giving. Now, they have some different situations there, but we thought, well, it costs us nothing, and we might have more ways to give and potentially bring in more funds. Why not? This seems good. And one example we had was, very few of us carry cash anymore. If we had a guest missionary here and said, hey, or a RUF intern, there'll be a new one coming. Hey, if you'd like to give, sometimes you forget to go online and give. With this, you can hit that QR code and you could give the young man or young lady $50 or $100 right there. And we could do that with missionaries. We could do it with all sorts of things. So we're excited to have that relationship with Sjoerd. Building update. Let me start by giving you some numbers. The playground that you guys did a campaign for pre-fire, post-COVID pre-fire, you did a fundraising campaign to put a playground that Matt Chase hooked us up with, a school that was getting rid of it. And it's sitting over here, disassembled. And the plan was to take that stuff out and put some of that spongy, rubbery stuff down and have the nice new playground professionally installed and put some shades up. And for that, you raised $66,715. That's a hard number. This next number is the 2021 donated amount towards the capital campaign for what we need to do here. This is a hard number. $289,505. $289,505. Now, unless we can invent a time machine and go back, that is stopped. 2021 is over. Those funds are there. Now, this is more of a soft number. This is the pledges that came in last year for this year. So maybe you said we're going to give $2,000 or $5,000 in the year 2022 to go towards what needs to be done here. This is that number, $147,450. So those are pledges for this year. Now that's not a hard number. If you want to give more, if you didn't pledge but you kind of want to now, we hope to gain new members through the year, and we hope that they'll help us fund it. So that number we would like to see rise. And this is another sort of mushy number. This is the insurance that we got from everything here. Now this number is not all going towards our redo. Some of it's already been spent to pay for the cleaning and the stuff that they had to take out and the dumpsters and that kind of stuff. So this number is flexible, and Thomas is still sort of in, what would we say, conversation, negotiation with the insurance guy, because when they assess your stuff, it's when you buy a used car. Your car's trash, their car's awesome. When they assess your stuff, it's, oh, this is a great building, and you're on the freeway, and it's worth this much. And then, hey, we need your help. Oh, your place is trash anyway. So Thomas is in negotiations. And this number is $286,112. And so if you add all of that up, it doesn't give you a final number, but we have an idea that it's about $600,000. Okay? Now, Bruce is going to get into the details of the thing in a minute, but I want to show you this. This was from 2018. We met with the session and Brett Pfeiffer and one of his co-laborers in the field, and they walked through and they did a sketch of what we have and the way we wanted to flip it and clean up these classrooms and put a security feature in the children's hallway. That was this. And that came to right at about $500,000, $497,000. And then we had a fire. And it turns out that we had a fire because there was an electrical situation in that room that came back to the board that's in here, the breaker box, and it was not wired correctly. The breaker should have flipped, and it did not flip, and so that outlet, the receptacle, got hotter and hotter and hotter, and the cardboard boxes that were beside it, I don't know that you would say they spontaneously combusted. They got hot enough to catch fire. Jen, still thankful that you and the homeschool group was here in the sanctuary. So as the people, the contractors came in and did a walkthrough, and they had multiples of each, so multiple plumbing contractors, multiple electrical, multiple sheetrock, multiple lumber, and all this. And they went through, and it turns out that behind the walls in a lot of this building is a rat's nest of just who knows what. And so this, remember, there's a one-page sketch. This is the new thing. This is not a sketch. You're welcome to thumb through this. This is every jot and tittle. Everything is done in that. And that number, that number came to, for us to get back in there by April, came to 1.4. Now, we did some things. We said, hey, we don't need to be back in there by April. Does that save us money? Yes, a little bit. And hey, will you come back through and give us another bid to not do commercial grade but residential grade, like treatment on the walls? This is not perfectly smooth. This is like what you would have at your house. This is going to save us a ton And hey, would you think about changing this? And hey, can we? And so that we got it down to 1.169173, and that doesn't include roofing. That many people, as you took the tours, suggested a number of things to do, and there are a number of alternates here that, again, Bruce is going to talk about. Those things got separated out, but what we're looking at is, give or take, we're halfway where we need to be. Q&A later, or it's?
Yeah, at the end of all this.
Okay. Q&A later. If you have questions, feel free to text me. My number's on Realm. Sarah posted that for you. Just put your name with it. If you want access to these charts and things, I didn't want to print enough for everybody, but you're welcome to look at them, or I can email them to you. Just let me know. Okay?
Good morning. Jason's given you a really good overview of kind of where we are. We need $1.2 million to complete the project, and that's really just the base project. We're about halfway there, which, you know, given our building fund was just started in what, Jeremy, September maybe?
It was really just 6 weeks long.
Yeah.
October, November.
I mean, you're to be commended for raising that kind of money in that short a time frame. So, given the money we've raised, the insurance money to come, and the pledges we have for 2022, we're sitting right at about half. The elders are in unanimous agreement that we want to proceed as soon as possible and complete the base building project at $1.2 million. Obviously, to do that, we're going to have to incur some debt. You know, I've been here since about 2000, so 22 years. And in that time, I've never known CPC to have a dime of debt. Debt is not in our DNA. That being said, we will be having a congregational vote to move forward with assuming debt and completing the project. We really don't have to do that. I mean, the elders are the trustees of the church, and we have the authority to pull the trigger on that. But again, because it's not in our DNA, we want you to have the opportunity to speak, to vote, and to know you're behind us in getting after it. Elizabeth Chase works for BOK and is on our building committee and is kind of holding our hand and walking us through acquiring the loan or loans that we need. We've had some really good ancillary projects, many of which came up through the tours that you took and made suggestions. And it may be that we end up getting a set fixed rate, 20-year AM kind of thing for the building project itself, that extra $600,000 that we need, the other half. And maybe we put a revolving line of credit to do the projects as we can. And that's just one hypothetical to give you an example. But that's where we are, and I'll turn it back to Jeremy.
Hey, don't take off, because now that you've heard about just the general budget, you can sit down if you want. I just didn't want you leaving the building. Now that you've heard about the general budget and the campaign update and where we are at the building project, we want to allow about 10, 12 minutes for question and answers. I know we have some people watching who may have texted in an answer. We want to answer those as best we can. If I can't, maybe a member of the building committee can. I'm not on that. Maybe Bruce can. What do we got?
Gina Rubio, here, let me turn this on for the folks online. Gina Rubio texted and asked, could you give us an update on the piano? And then she shared the value of said piano. The piano was fine. Nothing was wrong with it. It's been cleaned and refurbished. It's being stored, and that's covered by insurance. Yay. Yay.
Yes. Originally, we had said we were hoping to be in by Easter, which was realistic at a very high cost. Basically, contractors having to pull workers off other jobs to put them on ours, and that's going to come with a cost. What has Brett said and Zach?
Correct me if I'm wrong. 4 months, 6 months.
4 months for construction, and that can't start until after we secure
Finances.
So that process has to happen, and then we have to sign a contract with the general contractor. And they think they'll be ready material-wise to hit the ground running. There's a lot of demo still left to do, and so probably 4 months. I'd probably say June.
I'm going to re-ask Mary Jane's question for everybody to hear it, and then give your answer. What's the realistic timeline for the project? 4 months from when they start construction. We were hoping that would have already begun, but we've been delayed and have to get certain financing in place. So 4 months of actual work. So practically what that means is we'll be in the fellowship hall through midsummer at least. What was the question, Jason?
We have two here. That was not a question. It was providential because it was Carol Hilborn saying, have Jeremy repeat the questions and answers. And then you did it. So,
Jonathan.
We have rightfully approached this kind of partnership standpoint in that the elders had decided that there was a certain amount of the funds that would go to mission. And did that line item on our handout here on missions giving reflect that?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, we
We're going to comment on that maybe a little bit later.
yes. With our capital campaign, we pledged, regardless of what we raise, whether it be $1 or $1 million, we're going to give 10% of that to missions, divided up between Christ for Humanity and the Coonies and Shepherds, I believe, correct? And so I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, Jonathan, but let's say that we raised $420,000. So 42,000 of that. That's a done deal. But that's not reflected in this number. This is our general fund giving to missions for 2022. So reaching this year in 2022, we'll give $80,000 to missions. Part of that's international, part of that's RUF, part of that's church planting. But that does not include the money that we raised, correct? Yeah. Jim.
In looking at the budget, I did not see anything related to debt service and the provision that some of it might be financed. So,
That's on, are you talking about this page?
repeat the question.
Talking about this page, Jim?
well, like,
Yeah, I'm going to repeat the question because it's on there. Jim asked, looking at this budget and breakdown, he didn't see anything related to debt service, but that's under facilities, Jim. Our normal facility costs are roughly $90,000. We've made them this year $157,000.
So would that include the debt service cost with anticipated interest rate on the $500,000?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, of course, we're going to take a congregational vote to incur this debt. And so this budget that we've put together is contingent upon that.
And if you like worshiping in the fellowship hall in
Ad
perpetuity,
infinitum.
let your voice be heard.
Yes, Marina.
Did Bruce say that we were going to incur debt for 20 years?
The terms on, I don't know if he said that or not. The question Marina asked is, did Bruce say that we were going to take on a debt term for 20 years? I don't know. We had a session meeting on Tuesday night, and Elizabeth Chase joined us by Zoom, and that has yet to be worked out with the bank, meaning the term of the loan, the APR, all that kind of stuff. So I think they've looked at anything between 10 and 20 years. Did you go, Bruce?
Yeah, speaking for Bruce, now I just used an example of the loan payment being calculated on a 20-year amortization. And that kind of payment, ballpark-ish, is what's embedded in the new budget. Obviously, what we would hope to do is to pay that off much earlier and to feel comfortable pulling the trigger on some of the ancillary projects that have been identified. And they're good projects. I mean, we will all, I assure you, want to do. But good question.
Matt?
Bruce mentioned these ancillary projects. Could you just quickly mention a few, what they might be?
Yeah. I'm going to give it to Jason, but I do want to clarify one thing that I don't think was clear when Jason was speaking. Before the fire, God was kind to give us a playground valued at over $100,000, and we received it for free. So we raised money to install that playground and do it the right way. Then we had a fire. We're not taking the money that was raised for the playground and putting it towards something else. That will go to that's still priority. But the greater priority when it comes to construction right now is to get back in the sanctuary. So that's why we haven't done anything with the playground. But please don't misunderstand that we're taking that money and putting it towards something else. It will go to a playground, and that is a high priority. It's just not the highest priority when it comes to how we get back to normal. But I'm going to let Jason speak to the other projects.
Okay, I'm going to do these as quickly as I can. There were 8 of them that various people said, hey, we should think about this, or hey, we should think about this. The first 3 deal with the kids' wing, changing the ceiling grid, the drop tile, changing that whole thing out. That was going to be, I can't read what he has there, $21,000. Then it was going to be redoing the doors and the casings for all the doors in the church, because some of our doors are chintzy hollow core. It's just not good sound barrier. It's not safe. So replacing all the doors and the casings, making all of our doors match. That was going to be about $74,000. Redoing the millwork in the classrooms, the cabinetry, just the wooden stuff, and making it new and fresh and updating it. That was $28,000. So that's all stuff that we said, man, it would be nice, but it's not necessary, and we can make do at this time for a while. I'm going to skip alternate 4 for now. I believe it was Stu Spencer, but maybe others, said, hey, we should since money is so cheap right now, we should, if we're going to borrow enough to redo the roof here, the asphalt roof. And we had a roofer come out and look at the flat roof, which I'll talk about that in a second, and look at the shingled roof. And the roofer stands to make money. And he said, I would not redo your asphalt roof at this time. You've got another 10 years at least on it. So we said, okay, great, thank you. But he did say these flat roofs, it's called polyolefin. He said, this one for sure, he said, you've gotten more than you should have out of it. And it's a hailstorm or a heavy rain away from being filled with water in this hallway. He said, you should absolutely do this one. And the flat roof over here is not as bad, but if you're going to do this one, you should do that one. And that cost was $42,000, and that's one that we've left in the hopper to when we are paying down the note for the main project. We'll fold it in. One other one that we folded in immediately because it was really affordable was the infilling of the skylights in here, which will be at the back of this space. Actually, by infilling that, we saved ourselves about $8,000 or $9,000. So I don't.
You might speak to, because this was a question on the tours, that they're triple pane, but there's 2 of the 3 panes are.
Yeah, they are. The glass and the covering are triple paned, but the top part that faces that Oklahoma sun and Oklahoma rain and freezing wind, and it's cracking up top, and the first layer of glass is no good. And to redo the electric shades that open and close was astronomical. It was double the cost of just closing it in and making it match. So we went ahead and folded that one in. Okay, now the playground thing, which this may be important. So we added 2 things together, alternate 4 and alternate 7. Alternate 4 is titled exterior paving. Again, I can email you this if you're intrigued. And alternate 7 is miscellaneous exterior improvements. And what that entails is drastic. Those together come to about $200,000 and a little extra. It entails moving the playground from here into the green space up front and fencing, nice wrought iron fence with brick pilasters all the way around, and closing off the fence to the side of the office and youth room over here. Moving the playground there, the nice new one, and then ripping up this driveway and putting one in between the office and that house right there so that you would enter off of Columbia Place right there. And so the session believes that is a good thing. That is a face towards the community. It keeps our space safer. You can't just walk in off the front. You have to walk around. It doesn't block off. It doesn't keep you from coming onto the space, but it makes you work for it. It gives us more handicap parking that we can recapture that space. And so what we're doing with the money that you generated, the $66,000 and change for the playground, is holding it because we want to put it over there. We don't think it would make sense to redo this space right now and then pay to undo and redo it as we close that spot off up there. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Hey, a couple more questions if you have them. We need to transition here in a moment to our congregational meeting for the vote. Bruce.
There was a big safety issue too about not having kids crossing the main entry, going back and forth, and we certainly didn't, want that with the playground. So rerouting the entry
Right.
made a lot of sense safety-wise.
Yeah, it wasn't just, to Bruce's point, a lot of what's driven decisions has been safety. Not just to change things for change's sake, but we've heard this from a number of youth parents. Even Brett, who's the lead architect on this, has kids in youth. And none of you in here, I'm sure, but some people really go fast through the driveway area into the parking lot. I'm sure it's none of you, but it's someone.
Jonathan
And
friend,
it might be Debbie.
He drove into Ethan.
And when you have youth walking back and forth to the youth room, and even younger children going over to the greens place to play kickball and stuff like that, it's just not ideal. So, yeah. Have we thought about putting in the driveway on the west side of the church behind the houses so that it goes right off 51st? Yes, I mean they've thought of every option. So if it's an option, there's been so many. Do we have to stay in the fellowship hall, or will we have outdoor service when the weather is nicer?
That was Alyssa Black, by the way.
I loved the outdoor services, and I think that's definitely an option. You get a little bit tricky because then if you continue to have Sunday school, you got to have 2 services, one indoor, one outdoor. Some people never attended the outdoor because maybe they couldn't hear, or for one reason or another, there was too much traffic noise, who have started attending indoors. So we'll have to talk about that. But I don't think there's any opposition to not having an outdoor service when the weather is nicer. There was a hand over here. Jonathan.
Well, that's another safety issue related to this, which we're able to address in moving the driveway, is for those of you who come from east to west, and you're making a left turn in, those cars that come the other direction, that come over that little rise, it's a, you need to be careful. And so by moving it further to the east, there's so much more time for you to see the traffic coming before you make that left turn. That's a huge deal, and we've had some accidents out there.
I'm going to pass the paperwork.
Yeah. I think the previous question about moving the driveway by the houses, I think that was Benj. Was that Benj? Follow up with that question, Benj, to like someone on the building committee. I know they looked at multiple options, and there were easement right of way. I mean, I'm not on that committee, and so but they share stuff with me, and so I try to articulate it to you, some of it. But I know they looked at multiple options, and that sounded like what you asked sounded like one of the options they looked at. One last question. Anybody? Darcy.
I actually got 2. If I can sneak them in.
Sure.
Thomas mentioned that there's still additional demolition to be done. Would we be able to save a little if we had a work day and did some of that ourselves?
Darcy's
Thomas.
question is, Thomas indicated there's more demolition to be done. Could we save money by doing a work day? I'm going to answer that for you, Thomas. I know they've looked at a number of things in the project that we can do ourselves to try and save money, and we're already looking at that. I would just caution us, one of the reasons why it's costing us $1.2 million is because we did a lot of the work ourselves in the past. I'm not kidding. These contractors said, look, whoever did this work had no idea what they're doing, and that's why you had a fire, and it's why it's going to cost you 25% more, because we got to undo this work. So, yeah, knocking out a non-load-bearing wall, I can handle that. So we're going to do all that we can to save money. Yeah. Folks, now we have to go into the
had another one.
Oh, I'm sorry, Darcy.
It's just a good major talk about the playground. If we're closing that driveway and moving the playground to that side, would it make some sense to move the children's classrooms to that side so they have direct access to it?
I don't know. I mean, it makes a lot of, yeah.
You have classrooms on both sides of the hallway over here, and you don't have that option on this side.
Yeah. We have a hard stop here in just a few minutes, so we do need to transition into the congregational meeting. I know a lot of your questions are related to the building, both the financial piece of that as well as the project itself, the timing, and then just general budget. So please don't think that because we're moving on from the Q&A that we're not open to your questions. Please ask those of me, of Jason, of any of our elders, Bruce, that sort of thing. Let me get my notes here. So this morning, we have the privilege of electing 3 men to serve as deacon and 1 man to serve as elder. These men were nominated by you, the congregation. They have spent the last year being trained. They have been examined. They have been interviewed by the elders and now are being put forth for you, before you, to be elected. We are unanimously recommending Oscar Cervantes, Tim Eddy, and Brian Farish for the office of deacon. And we're nominating Matt Whitman for the office of elder. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to call this congregational meeting to order.
Can I make
at
a quick
10:20 with prayer, and we'll pray. Lord, thank you for your grace and goodness. Thank you for this beautiful people that you've gathered called Christ Presbyterian. I pray, Lord, that you would guide us. Thank you for raising up these men in this congregation who will lead and serve. We pray, Lord, that they would honor you as they do so. In Jesus' name, amen. We have an order that we have to do this by. We need a recording clerk. I need a motion to elect a recording clerk. I would receive nominations for James Hawes to be nominated as the recording clerk. Thank you, Ben. Is there a second? Any discussion about James Hawes, our stated clerk, being elected as recording clerk? Any discussion? Any objections? So ordered. I need you now, if you are a communing member of CPC, to raise your hand. If you're a communing member. Jason, will you count over here?
Kason counted earlier, and there were just at about 100 folks.
Okay. Our quorum is set at 56, so I declare that we have a quorum. If you did raise your hand and you are a communing member of our church, Jason has begun passing out ballots. Do you have one of those? Does anyone need a ballot? I realize, Jason, we didn't designate anyone to receive those and count. Can I tap Caleb Harlan and you to do that? Sure. Would you mind doing that, Caleb?
Real quick, if you took one of the pins out of the bucket, most of them are brand new, and they have a little plastic cap on them. You'll have to pull that off, or it won't write.
You're bad folks, you're bad parishioners. You've gotten ahead because I have to say, are you now ready to proceed to the vote? The BCO actually requires that phrase, are you now ready to proceed to a vote? Yes. Then if you'd mark your ballots and hand it in to either Caleb or Jason. Yes.
Is this the first time we've had to put our names on the ballot? And if so, why are we doing that?
To verify that everyone who votes is a communing member. I'm not sure if it has been or not.
I don't think so. I think it's the first time.
Okay. I know that we ran into some problems with RPR, which is Review of Presbytery Records, because we have to be able to verify that those who vote, if we're doing it by ballot, are communing members.
I put Felix's name on mine, and he is a communing member.
Hey, while Jason and Caleb are collecting those ballots and counting them, I want to share a couple of other officer transitions. James Hawes has been an elder in our church for a number of years, and he has been our clerk of session for 2 or 3 years. And he is going on sabbatical this year. That just means that he will be stepping off active service for 1 year as an elder and just getting some much needed time away. Our new clerk for this year, for 2022, perhaps years to come, but at least for this year, is Scott Donathan, and our assistant clerk will be Heath Kirkaby. Corey Love was chairman of the diaconate this past year, and Corey will be going on sabbatical from active service on the diaconate this year. And Corey, who's the new deacon chair? Stuart Spencer will be the new deacon chair. And so I want you guys to know who your representatives are. And I think it would be fitting for us to pray for the men who are going on sabbatical. Benj is also going on sabbatical. You haven't even been serving that long, Benj. Okay. Man, I had to be here a decade before I got time off. We're going to pray for James, for Benj, for Corey, Stu, and Scott and Heath. Lord, thankful that in our polity and system, we have men to serve, and then at a certain point, they get to pull back and just spend some time with their family and on projects. And so thank you. I pray that this year would be a year of refreshing for Corey and for Benj as well as for James. And I pray, Lord, that the men who come and fill in these new slots, Scott and Heath as clerk and Stuart as chairman of our diaconate, Tim and others who will oversee the treasury role. I pray that you would give them strength and Lord, thank you for their willingness to serve, and so guide these men. In Jesus' name, amen. Y'all still counting? Okay. I don't see it. I don't believe there is anything preventing us from doing this while the votes are being counted. For years, it's part of our bylaws as a church. We're incorporated, and the trustees of this corporation have been the elders, the active elders of the church. And so every year, we have to re-elect for legal purposes. We have to re-elect trustees. And so I would entertain a motion to elect the active elders as trustees for 2022. Is there a motion to that effect? Is there a second? Is there any discussion? This will probably be this is the first time in my 10 years here that the trustees will actually do something this year. We'll have to at least appoint someone to sign off on things. You're in trouble. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Those opposed? Again, I don't see why we couldn't do this now. We have to approve the minutes of this meeting that James is recording, but rather than waiting a year from now to approve those minutes, it would be really helpful to appoint a commission to approve those minutes. And so I would ask you to make a motion that the elders be the commission that approve these minutes. I can't make the motion, but I'll take that as a movement in a second. Any discussion? Little piece of BCO trivia here. You want to know the difference between a commission and a committee? Jonathan? What is it, Jason?
A commission acts with authority.
Yeah.
A committee recommends.
Yeah. We had to know that to be ordained.
So Caleb is still unfolding maybe 20.
Okay.
Not a single no vote in anything.
We will publish. I think it's been our custom to say, but all it's required is a majority, and there's a majority. Let me make sure they're not telling me something. The language of the BCO is that if there is a large minority who is in opposition to a candidate, that we need to recount, but there is not. So, we good? Yeah. Okay. Well, having been duly nominated, trained, and elected, I'm happy to announce that Oscar Cervantes, Brian Farish, and Tim Eddy have been elected as deacons to serve this church. Yeah. And Matt Whitman has been nominated, trained, and duly elected to serve as an elder in this church. And we will have an ordination and installation service on a Sunday morning as part of our worship service over the next month to 6 weeks. We'll find a week that is convenient for these men, their families, and we will have that as part of our service. Now is the time for adjournment. Are there any questions before we adjourn? All right, then is there a motion to adjourn? Any discussion, any objections? Kent Farish, will you close us in prayer, please? We have about 12 minutes before our worship time begins, and so greet one another, and we'll get started in a moment.